I was always trying to help my brother to deal with his anger, and maybe I helped him, maybe I didn't, but I don't feel that I helped him enough because he's still got so many anger issues. And he always did. He always had like an explosive temper and stuff like that. Do I feel like it backfired? Not exactly. No.
There's only so much that you can do, Robin.
Yeah. What do you think, Roman? Did you try to help your sister? Did it backfire? Did it work against you? Did it help you? Did it help her?
Mm, well, that's a good question. No, up until now, no, I helped her with some stuff. But when we were teens, no, I was really mean to her when we were teens. And it was a horrible time for her as well because of when our parents like divorced. It was, yeah, there was no communication at all and just weird for everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but
but
you probably also weren't feeling very good about yourself at that point.
no, I wasn't. No, I wasn't at all.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's tough when parents get divorced.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't have to be, when there's communication, when
There's always this business of split loyalties. There's always this
yeah,
business of
yeah,
who
that's
do
true.
you have to spend time with. There's always
Yeah,
this business of
so true.
it. I don't think it's usually tough and usually confusing. I don't know if anyone can really escape that because
No, for
what I
sure.
noticed about my parents and their divorce was they were dealing so much with their own issues that they really didn't have time for us. you know,
Mm.
and that
And
made
how
it
old were you?
doubly hard.
How old were you back then, Robin, when your parents split?
I was 13. I was kind of done with my parents at that point. I was gonna parent myself, basically. But yeah, my brother was younger. He was like 10. He ended up living with my mother, which probably hurt him a lot.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, sense
yeah,
where he's got a hell of a lot more anger.
yeah. That's why he's got all of his anger from, yeah. Um, but yeah, for me, it was just mostly dealing. Then I was trying to support my dad too, and trying to support him for like all the anxiety and fear and confusion that he had suddenly being like this single guy on his own, trying to raise me and trying to have a life and trying to date other women and all this stuff. And it was like, because he was, because he always wanted to be this married guy and all of a sudden he wasn't. So
Mm.
whatever. Hmm. I mean, and he emotionally supported both of his crazy wives. I mean, this was him
Oh,
seeking his own validation, that he married one that was crazy and then he married another one that was totally batshit crazy. He was manic depressive and alcoholic for the second one. But yeah, but yes, I mean that's always kind of like the way I looked at it. It was like this is how he has to validate himself is by taking care of these crazy women and good for him. I will not be one of those crazy women. And that was like the
no.
justification for my whole life. I will not be like any of them. But as far as it went for me, my brother was angry because he had to live with her, but I was so relieved that my mother was out of the picture. I was like, I never want to see her again.
Oh, that's hard when you're like 13.
Yeah.
I remember wanting my parents to get divorced, thinking that might help stop the abuse. Because
Yeah.
again, at that point, and So I wasn't even a teenager. It was probably like 9, under 9 at that point, but they were fighting and yelling, and I'm not even sure if they were hitting each other.
Mm.
So it was like, as long as I don't have to be around this and I can go with the nicer parent, which seems to be my dad, we need to stop this. And
Yeah.
she said that she didn't think the abuse would stop.
Hmm.
She thinks that um, my mom would have ended up with custody of all of us regardless. And I'm like, yeah, back then women were still given custody, more so than anything. So yeah,
Yeah.
it probably, but I don't think that either way, my dad was not helpful. He could have helped mitigate stuff and prevent it, but he didn't. Him staying there just made it worse because
Mm.
he had no backbone. He, don't talk about your mother this way. Well, I wouldn't talk about her this way if she wouldn't do this shit.
Mm.
But yeah, I remember like showing up to like my dad's workplace even, or random stores, and trying to pick out a woman that I wanted to be my mom, and being like, my mom. And then like trying to convince myself that, like, you know what, I was born. I was delivered into this family by accident, and maybe my true purpose is to go find my real family. Like the things that I would concoct because I hated where I was.
Yeah, right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and I know it can be very, very difficult for other people who have had parents that have split, like my husband, like um, yeah. So I can only imagine the actual pain that comes from having parents split up, as opposed to being in a position where you want your parents to split up. So I acknowledge both of the experiences.
Well, I did. I wanted my parents to split up after a while because I was tired of the fighting. It's just like horrifying when people just like there's so much hostility in your home that
Mm.
if they're both in the same house at the same time, there's just so much tension. It's like I don't want this. This just increases everyone's anxiety. Who needs that?
Right? And as children's, like you pick up everything. So
Mm,
yeah, just like if and then it's like imprinted in our brains. Okay, that's how couple works. They're frustrated
right.
and no, so just split up if
Yeah,
you.
I mean, that was horrifying. It was like I felt like for a long time my parents were staying together for the sake of the children. It's like
Right?
you
Yeah.
aren't doing
Oh,
anybody a favor here,
right.
Yeah.
They thought they did us a favor, but no.
Mm,
And yeah, especially in my family, it was like, okay, so there was anger and resentment, but you don't show that, you don't deal with that. So, it's
mm,
years of resentment and angers.
mm, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, Roman, were there ever any emotions that you were allowed to express in your family?
Mm, it's a good question. Well, yes, like love, affection, or joy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sadness as well. That was no problem.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, but my mom would
Interesting.
also. So my dad is like, no, my dad did a wonderful job, like playing with us.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was awesome because he's a big child. And my mom would like encourage us to talk. She was like, okay, hey, how do you feel? How are you? It's important to talk. But she didn't like. She herself didn't do it. So
Hmm.
as children, you copy your parents, but not what they say, so what they do.
Yeah,
So
you picked that up.
so
Hmm.
yeah, there was yeah, we didn't really learned how to truly express ourselves. Mm.
Hmm.
And
It's
how
interesting that sadness was allowed, though.
But not
right,
anger.
that
Yeah.
was no problem. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Why was that not allowed in your family? Sure. Or like,
Um,
I mean,
so again, everything goes back to my mom, but it was like she had to have everything so controlled and it had to be the way that she wanted it. So this love and affection, yeah, no, it's dangerous to show it, um, even to your siblings, because if she finds out that, you actually like a sibling, she'll try to, um, she tries
no.
to break up the relationship so that you can't depend on anybody except her. Right. So we're talking like narcissistic level type shit, right? Going on.
Fuck, yeah, that's like a whole new level. Like, shit.
Yeah. And so I could not express any I couldn't express happiness, I couldn't be laughing, I couldn't be joyful because all of that would set her off because she herself was so miserable. So she only got satisfaction when other people were suffering more
Mm,
than she was. And then she would feel okay about herself. So even though we couldn't express anger, she could, and obviously she did. But
so,
yeah, it was like this, we have to keep things pleasant, and pleasant in the sense of if anybody were to walk in our house, they would immediately know that we're a loving family that,
mm,
you know,
yeah.
loves God. And it's just like, this is
Yeah.
shit. If someone walked into this home, they could tell there is not love here. you know?
Oh, no. Yeah.
It's just like, so yeah, so it's interesting that some emotions are okay and others aren't. And emotions aren't good or bad.
They just
They're
are. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're here to give us information,
Mm.
but we're not taught that. We're not taught how to listen to it and how to process it and release it, regulate.
Right.
Yeah, so anytime I'd be coming home from school, I'd have to have like a blank face going inside, flat affect, like, how was school? Fine. And then I'd just leave and go into my room and just start working on my homework. Because if I gave her anything, it was ammo to use. So it was like, I have nothing, I have no joy, there's
Wow.
nothing for you to look at here. So
Wow.
so I'm still carrying that. I'm realizing sometimes I will have a flat affect talking with another person because I'm afraid of something and I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm still doing this." And like, how many years later?
Wow.
But I caught it.
Hmm.
And you, Robin, what were the emotions that were allowed and which were not allowed?
I would say most emotions were allowed, not encouraged for sure, but they were allowed. Um, no, emotions weren't really encouraged so much, but they were acknowledged, they were allowed. It was a lot different after my dad remarried because my stepmother was in all kinds of therapy and stuff like that. She was really into emotions and stuff like that. Growing up, nobody really, like, they were acknowledged. It was all right. If you're sad, if you're happy, if you're fearful, if you're angry, okay, we can deal with this. But it wasn't really ever discussed or brought up that much, I would say. I mean, certainly no one would ever tell you if they loved you or something like that. If you were upset, they would deal with it. You know, or they would talk to you about it or whatever, but it was just sort of like you're kind of on your own.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So not much safety here.
Not a lot, no.
Oh, Robin, have I sent you the Ho'oponopono meditation um, that I'm currently doing? I think I've sent it to a lot of people, but
Oh,
um,
cool.
like do you know this Hawaiian techniques?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I
And
do.
I've been doing it for the last month, almost every night, and
Uh-huh.
it's awesome, really. Maybe
Yeah.
I think that it will help you as well.
Okay, sorry, I was looking up the name of a book that I read like when I first got married because women can't be angry. Um,
Mm.
I can't remember the year it was originally published, but it's called "Be Angry but Don't Blow It." And so, and so I'm looking at like the genres that it can be considered under, and some of it is like in Christian women's issues or Christian self help. And that obviously was not where I was coming from when I was reading it. I was looking at it from the emotional self help, and and I had my husband's best friend and his wife had walked into our apartment right as I'm reading this book, and of course, like I'm like, oh crap, I'm reading a book about anger. I'm gonna get judged, and I had to like make up some excuse as to why I was like doing this. And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna be like my mom, so I'm gonna learn how to deal with anger effectively. And that was the only thing that I could say to people because it's like, oh my god, you're reading a book about anger. I am. I also read books about other things too that you don't like.
Read all sorts of books, yeah. Yeah,
Gina.
that's interesting because I've always sort of like, yeah, like those kind of books, like I never would want anyone to really know if I was reading them or not. Like, I always felt like it was nobody else's business, damn it, but but it's probably just because I just didn't want them to know, that I was even thinking about it.
Well, there's that judgment of like, oh, you have an anger problem. And it's
Right.
well, okay, everything's on a spectrum. Yeah, okay, you might have explosive anger, but there's a difference between punching a hole in a wall versus like throwing something at someone or you know. So yeah, and then you have non-explosive anger,
Mm-hmm.
but anger is there for a reason, and it is trying to tell you something, just like all your other emotions. It's
Boundaries, no?
information.
Yeah. And someone has trounced all over you and you're not going to allow it. You're feeling really damaged by it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing that people don't recognize about anger is that it usually is a boundary issue.
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah, and
Mm.
it's really okay to feel angry.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're angry, yeah, someone crossed the line. Point.
Mm-hmm.
And you like, especially like in Switzerland, like it's like you almost have to apologize, to be angry.
Mm.
It's like
Mm.
oh,
Yeah, but it's a totally normal response. It's anyone would get angry, like you know, like animals get angry when their boundaries are
yeah.
crossed, it's just a
Yeah.
total, it's either the fight or the flight. And
Mm.
in this case, you're fighting, Well, yeah. Or if you don't, you're going to turn it against yourself somehow, which is worse.
Mhm. The worst kind is the silent anger.
Yeah.
Hmm. I think the worst kind is when you don't even recognize the anger and it's just
And it blows up.
there.
Yeah.
You
Mm,
can't recognize it and you can't express it because you don't know, you don't understand what it is or why it's there, why you keep having to push this down.
Mm. Yeah, so true. And once again, we're not taught that in school or
Mm.
so
Yeah, wouldn't it be helpful if kids were taught
yeah.
about healthy emotions and how to deal with them in healthy ways? And hmm,
And I don't know, maybe have like emotion buddies at school or stuff like that.
what a great idea. What a great idea. Yeah.
I was just making a link for anger with sexuality, but don't.
Yeah, there's a link.
There's a lot of different directions that could go in. We'll have to explore it sometime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
That's a whole podcast in itself.
that's true. That's true.
So even with us just talking, like there's getting even just a snippet of your insight, Roman, is expand, like opening up a lot more topics and things that we can do, like all together and stuff. So thank
Wow.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really interesting, guys.